From the center of the galaxy, direct to you live on a Monday. This is ForceCenter, show about Star Wars pop culture and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Ken Napstock.
And I'm Jen Landa. I like that.
Breaking news. It's Ken and Jen in the afternoon.
For your morning drive.
Joseph Scripshaw is out today and out this week, concentrating on the final stages, or part of the final stages, of his film Dead Media. So, as always, you can follow the links down below and support the continued post-production of the film, but he needed to kind of buckle down, Jen, and we're here to hold down the fort. How are you?
I'm great. I am great. Obi-Wan Jacoby says, we're missing a Joseph. Yes, we are. But he is here in spirit. Like a Force ghost, but he won't suddenly appear on a log.
Yeah, he could be watching live, but he's edited. He's doing sound design. He's doing it's the final big stretch of the film. So, as much as he'd love to be talking Star Wars, and I'm sure this question we're gonna press on. That's so sweet. We're gonna press on. We're gonna go forward on the trail.
Let me grab my canteen and my backpack.
We shall press on. We got a question we're going to dive in here in a second. Here, it's a wonderfully deep question. As always, we encourage you not just ask a question, but maybe share how you arrived at the question. But also today, hey, if you got another question related to Star Wars, and maybe even a Life Center or other center question or two for the time that we're here today, we'd love to answer those as well. If you're watching live on YouTube, leave us a super chat, thumbs up, like, subscribe, all those good things to help the show not only continue, but to thrive in this age of, pop culture discussion still going on, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Pop culture discussion is pressing on.
That's right. We're pressing on. We need this. We need this during these times. Some moments of levity.
We do. Like me chasing a cat out of my yard to save the squirrels. All right, let's do this. You ready, Jen? You ready for this question?
I am. This is a good one.
It's a good one. And I just realized as my eyes start to really fall apart faster than they were a year ago, I have to kind of lean back.
Oh, no, not the lean back.
Oh, no. All right, this comes to us from Zach. Zach says, hello, ForceCenter. As the post-Andor discourse goes on, a popular thread continues to be using Andor's realism to critique the mythic and spiritual aspects of other Star Wars stories. For instance, this week I watched a video making the case that Cyril Karn was not on a redemption arc in Season 2 and had nothing in the story to earn it. Had done nothing in the story to earn it. I agree with that for the most part, but when it used this to critique Vader and Kylo's redemption arc, saying they were unearned and implying it was harmful to lift those up as examples of redemption because all they did was one good deed for someone close to them. While I understand where that comes from, the critique bothered me. It seemed to miss the points of the Star Wars story, as I understand it. Primarily that Vader's redemption has as much to do with Luke reaching out to Vader and offering him a chance. Same with Kylo and Rey. Redemption and forgiveness are not things that can be earned on one's own. So my question is, does Andor ruin Star Wars? That's a wonderfully clickbaity question there, and I love that there. But instead, are there places for you where you enjoy a bit of Andor? And see my eyes, Jen. So my question is not does Andor ruin Star Wars? But instead, are there places for you where your enjoyment of Andor and its, quote, sci-fi realism bumps up against your love and understanding of the more mythic, spiritual side of Star Wars? Does it cause you to re-examine some things, including storytelling choices that hadn't been challenged before? So, apologize for the misread there. A lot there, Jen. A lot I want to almost, break apart and answer, so we can discuss it as we will. But I'll start with you there. Redemption, Andor, realism, mythic. Where do you go with this?
This is actually a question that came up yesterday. My sister wanted to get a Star Wars t-shirt for me, and it was really cool and it had Vader right on the front. And for the first time in my Star Wars life, I went, I don't know how I feel about wearing a Vader shirt. Yes. I have tons of Vader merch. I have, backpacks. I have jewelry, everything. But I cannot lie and say that Andor has not made me re-examine or at least look at things in a different light. And And it really is, and it's not just Andor. I would say it's also Solo, Rogue One, and Kenobi. Those were the other big ones. Where for the first time, I was like looking at stormtroopers a little differently. And it's not like I missed the point before. I think that there
Right.
was more of a fantastical, mythical element to Star Wars that made it feel like fun to pretend to be a baddie. But now with Andor,
Yeah, and you're right. You didn't miss the point. I didn't miss the point, but it was always the Empire has cooler toys.
Yeah.
That's something we've said a lot here over the years in Force Center, especially for us in the Gen X generation, where you get that Sears catalog wish book and you'd want to get the cool toys. And for me, being a fan of G.I. Joe, the franchise, the comics, the shows, the movies, whatever, and the toys, I have way more Cobra toys than G.I. Joe, which is a worldwide terrorist organization bent on destruction and evil. But I have the black tank with the red right. Like I have all that stuff there. So I think that just kind of carries over. I think it's great that we have that. I've told the story here too many times, repeating it. I'm like a drunk uncle at a party. I get it. But I have my Rebel insignia baseball cap. But for years I had my Imperial insignia one because of what you're talking about. It's just kind of the cooler toys. I'm a Star Wars fan. But then it became, I had reactions in coffee shops to people looking at it and not even saying anything, but just kind of looking at it and assuming I probably drive a Cybertruck and they know who I vote for. And the hat had to go. And I had to represent the Rebel lines.
Yeah, I do think there's also, it's kind of interesting that Andor came out when it did. And I know they talk about how you could put it in any timeline and it would be relevant. But I think for us in the US right now, it feels specifically relevant. And I have seen some people that I know, and I think that they're nice people and they're posting Imperial stuff. And I'm like, is this code for something? Are you trying to say that you're aligning with what is happening with
going on?
ice raids and all this stuff, right? It's one of those things where for the first time I'm like, Star Wars has always been political. Star Wars has always. But when we think of like the most quintessential Star Wars things, we think of like the icon of Vader's mask, his helmet.
Right.
We think of the stormtrooper helmet, right? All these things that we see on merch, and it's fun, and it's like, oh, it's kind of scary, right? It's a little bit like, but for Halloween or whatever, you can pretend to be these characters. But now that we've seen the atrocities that the Empire has committed in these newer shows, including Andor, it does feel a little weird.
Yeah, and to the question of does the realism take away from the mythic and what's the balance? I like that this question includes the Vader and Kylo stuff, and you mentioned the Vader thing. I guess it's just the day of Ken tells all the same stories again, which is, let's be honest, every day. But growing up in the church in the 80s, I actually had a pastor that put up a ghostly silhouetted image of what we all knew was Vader's helmet, and he talked about how the world and society is fallen for is praising the evil people, and I get it to a point. Actually, I'm not even mocking this pastor. But it was interesting to me as a kid. I was like, hey, that's Darth Vader, but I don't think that Star Wars is fault. I think a lot of times the wrong lessons are learned, or we fail to learn them when we're thinking too much of it in the real world sense. So to the first part of this question brings up this Vader and Kylo thing. Yeah, I think in some sense it is a deathbed conversion. It is a deathbed Hail Mary. It is this final act that has very much to do with Luke and very much to do with Rey, and everything Zach's saying there is right. But separating out here for a little bit, Jen, I think when you spend too much time going, well, Kylo didn't do enough to be redeemed, Vader didn't do enough to be redeemed, you are missing the mythic part of it. And it's fun to have pop culture discussions where they get into the nitty gritty, that are real, that are fun to have. Shout out to my buddy Billy Business. Billy Patterson just co-launched this YouTube channel I keep talking about, Doug Defends, with a lawyer, Doug Ridley, who talks about pop culture as from a defense attorney's point of view. It's a fascinating conversation, and they get into some Star Wars stuff, and it's fun, and it's a fun realism where if you're looking at Vader and going, he didn't deserve it, that's not the point of the story, and it includes Luke's journey and Anakin's and everyone else is around him. And that's where I think I start to head into this question a little bit more. You?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the success of Kylo Ren is that it was a very, for me, relatable, real world type of character. But I'm a Reylo. I kind of ship their relationship. And if you say that, people are like, how dare you? He did this, this, and this. Well, of course, it's pretend. It's not like I'm not going to be one of those people at the courtroom, or whoever, Rich Ramirez or whatever, being like, yeah, I'm not like that. This is not apples to apples comparison, right?
So I grew up in a church where the wives of Bruce Davis and Tex Watson were attended our church.
No.
Yes.
No.
So it was always I grew up like I forget their names, but it was like, why are their husbands not here? They were part of a very infamous murderous cult.
Oh my gosh. You should write a book about this stuff. This is oh my gosh. Wow.
Sorry.
Wow. We could have a whole conversation.
Oh yeah.
On serial killers and their groupies. Anyways, I digress. The thing about Vader is, I guess, why did and do people love Vader? It's kind of something I want to examine. Like, why do people like Kylo Ren? Why were kids and adults like wanting to get that merch or the t-shirt and wear that, like, or the toys? What is it about those characters? I mean, the same thing obviously for Luke and the good people, but I feel there's a lot more Empire merch, Vader merch.
Well, there's I always have this theory of a Star Wars realm with the people obsessed with Vader, that they continue to miss the bigger point as well, just as much as some of the folks are missing the point about his redemption representing something that can happen in our own lives. Not necessarily that you don't have to pay amends, but just that you can change. It's yours. You can be as good as your next choice, and also the people around you. I keep on highlighting Zach's excellent point that this has a lot to do with Luke. It has a lot to do with Luke taking off the mask. It has a lot to do with Rey giving up her life force. All those things that are part of the story. But Vader as a power fantasy has gone well past that's kind of fun, and I agree with it too, because I like that hallway scene too in Rogue One. I think it's a little horror film. I think Vader's cool in that regard. I think that shot down the hall with the lightsaber is one of my favorite moments in Star Wars. But as I will bang the drum until I am kicked out of the Star Wars pundit world, Darth Vader, time and time again, you could start doing a supercut, walks down a hallway or into a room, stomps. He's a monster walking into the room. He's the most powerful man in the galaxy, and he never gets what he wants until he gives that all up, right? And that's the lesson. That's the parable. And those that don't follow Vader to the end of the hallway and pick up the lesson there are kind of what you're talking about. And I'm obsessed with the idea of worshiping Vader too. I want a doc. Let's just do a doc, Jen. ForceCenter prevents the cult of Vader.
Yeah. Yeah. And somebody mentioned this, I think a couple people, it's about aligning with power. I feel like, especially for kids who feel so powerless, gravitating towards these characters that represent the ultimate power, that are like superhuman, right? That could do anything and be anything. That's part of the appeal. I'm going to go on a slight tangent. I highly recommend watching K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix.
I'm hearing great things.
I have watched it so many times with my kids, so many times, so much so that my mother-in-law saw a snippet of it and she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is really violent." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess it kind of is." But part of what makes it so appealing is that these K-pop girls are powerful. They're kicking butt. And my kids are like, yes, not only are they glamorous pop stars, but they also have the power to kill demons and to be able to take care of themselves. And there's something really, really cathartic about that is a fun fantasy. But then with Andor, it takes on a different form. And really it's about like examining it in a different way. I feel like the original trilogy helped us look at Vader's story as a cautionary tale and what redemption and things like that. The sequel trilogy did its own thing. Andor is looking at it from another lens. And they're all good, just in different ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I also get, the old. I think the best villains. The trope is the villain thinks he's the hero of his own story, and yes, that works, and that's a great second chapter of your screenwriting book that you want to read to learn to write screenplays. But I think it goes even beyond that, where you want to dance by pulling people in. I always cite, it was a Killmonger in the first Black Panther, Michael B. Jordan. Like at the end of that movie, I'm like, he's right. Whether or not that's completely the right answer, but I'm just like, nah, he was right. I know you, Jen. You love The Acolyte, and a lot of things that come here said you're like, I'm putting that down in my notepad. I think I like that idea. My former partner she'd watch that series, and I kind of didn't want her to watch Acolyte because I knew I was going to have an argument with her about how Chimera was bad. Like she'd be like, no, he's the only right one, and I think that's great. And there's something realistic about that. I think Andor does a great job with that. The DiGiamiro stuff we've talked about often. Season 1 you are rooting for. You should be rooting for in a lot of ways. But the truth is revealed, and I think that's still the lesson. That's still the journey. If you get the whole picture, and I'm not Nick in chat saying, "Hey, my 7-year-old ain't here for the Star Wars themes. Vader looks cool," and that's part of it too. That's one of the most iconic looks. But for anyone beyond 7, 10, 15 to start to be able to really understand what the art is saying to you and what you can take from it is important. And it goes the other way too. Side tangent. I don't want to go on my episode 9 rant or my episode 8 rant. Anything Kylo says when he's Kylo should be considered incorrect, wrong, the bad guy. Mm-hmm. So even some of the horrible things he's saying to Rey are designed to hurt, destroy, control, manipulate. They're not the thesis of the movie, and that's another discussion for another time, Jen. Anyways, I'm going to pull up some comments here. If you got any more thoughts as we continue this discussion here.
It's why I think the Emperor is such a successful character in the prequels, is that as a kid, it was like, well, yeah, of course, I would be able to spot evil if it looked like that, like that weird looking man with the cloak. I'm not going to do that. But you can see how easily people might fall to the dark side or be charmed by him because he is incredibly charming and he is like kind of a father figure and he knows how to work the room. And there's a lot of people in our lives that are like that. And I just thought it was a beautiful portrait of evil.
Of evil. Indeed. Obi-Wan Jacoby saying, Star Wars can have the mythic fantasy and the greater realism. It's big enough galaxy for both to exist. Fans who act like they can't are missing the forest for the trees. Really agree with that. Really agree with that. And I think it's present in all shows. I think the balance is really good. Even in a show like Skeleton Crew, which is all heart and myth and joy at times, but it's so real. It has the emotions are what's gritty for me in that series. Andor is unique in that way. From the opening shot, you knew something different was going on, and I'm one that thinks, hey, maybe a little bit more aliens. You and I tomorrow have a question we're going to answer about what glup shitto we'd like to have appear in Andor and make it a little more wacky at times. Not in a realistic way. We understand Andor, what it was doing, but I think Andor is the first. That's why this question always comes up. It is the first to seem to be dramatically different, and at times is dramatically different than the rest of Star Wars. But they all can exist.
Jay from Nowhere, I agree. It's not that Andor ruins traditional Star Wars storytelling, but it recontextualizes something like stormtroopers into real-world fascist analogs, especially amidst current American events. Yes, makes me... I saw a picture from my wedding. We have it up in our house with the stormtroopers by our side. And I was like, huh.
That's right.
What?
That's right. You are for I don't know. I don't know if newer ForceCenter listeners understand the Jen Landa lore and part of the Force. You had kind of a I'll say a well-known Star Wars wedding. I knew about it before I knew you. You know?
Right. And we had stormtrooper escorts. They greeted our wedding guests. And then we went through downtown and we walked with them. It was really, really fun. And part of the reason it was fun is because you feel powerful. You have these stormtroopers by your side. And there is something both childlike and whimsical and also badass. And that's another thing that I think is interesting for us older fans, right? Like there's something kind of like, I don't want to say cool, but it's like saying that our fandom is grown up. It's like
Mhm.
saying, "Oh no, I don't like those furry Ewoks, right? I like Vader. I
Mhm,
like the
mhm, mhm.
stormtroopers," right? It's like trying to protect ourselves, but I like
Yeah.
all of it. I like it all.
Yeah,
Jar
well
Jar, Ewoks, everything.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting, without a doubt, everyone in the world of the Star Wars world, I think, knows of the 501st and the Cosplay Legion that does a lot of great charity work. It was started for charity, but, there again, too, there's an entire, group of fans who, for the most part, I think there is some exceptions, but for the most part, are dressed up as the Empire as they go around the world doing good things, and that comes from another era. But I've seen other organizations and other cosplay charity groups try to tend towards the light side,
Mm,
and it doesn't seem to catch on as well as dressing up as an Imperial. So there's the there's
right.
the line.
Maybe I should have had the Mando Mercs at my wedding.
The Mando works, but even then they'll say the Mando works until I don't know, until Boba Fett takes his mask off and becomes a community leader. I'd still
Yeah.
question, dressing up as some Mandos, some maybe.
Yeah.
I don't want to piss off the Mando mercs. I know they're strong.
No, 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 they're all great.
Nick says this. There's also a difference between that was a cool story beat part moment, and I think what said evil character did was good or cool. Yeah, 100%.
Mm,
100%,
mhm.
even though we run up against it sometimes there. Let's see. Physics buddy Joe enjoyed your comment there. It's a lot about aligning with power. Whoa, I hear that in a Keanu Reeves voice right there.
Mm.
Nick comes back with this one here. The only thing that the Mythic takes away from is the ability to see the more overt political message and themes in Star Wars. It's easier to believe it's all escapism when it's more mythic. I think Jay from Nowhere had a similar thought, maybe from the other angle. But yeah, I
Mhm.
think too. I keep saying, season one, I loved Andor, but I wrestled with it a little bit. I wrestled with the reception, Jen. I can't
Mm.
recall. Were you kind of where were you after season one of Andor? I know we both love the show. Joseph loved the show too, but I was wrestling with some things.
Yeah, I was fine with it until I'd see even more recently where I started seeing people weaponizing the success of
Yes.
Andor towards other parts of Star Wars, where I'm like, oh, why are
Hmm.
you here then? If you don't
Yeah.
like the original trilogy or the sequel trilogy, like you're still hanging around, like
Yeah. Yeah.
what?
It's
I don't
it's
understand.
yeah. It's a little bit of a kick rock situation for me when they start, and that was part of what I was wrestling with. But part of it was the show itself. I did feel it lacked a lot of Star Wars in it, and I know there's some people I love and respect who are like, "I'm so glad I don't feel like I'm watching a Star Wars show when I'm watching Andor." I'm like, but it's Star Wars,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
that's why we buy the ticket. I don't go to the Italian restaurant to order the tacos, like I'd go to Don Cuco's to order like that's why we're here for Star Wars. So I wrestled with it because it was about the reception. But season two came along, and I was so excited for it. And it's one of my favorite things. And that from that Steve Earle Revolution Starts Now trailer to even watching some clips this past weekend, I do love what the show does, even though it doesn't touch a lot of the other spots. And I've come to appreciate, Jen, kind of what is being talked about there, which is I know that Bad Batch at times might even go harder
Oh
politically.
yeah. Hmm.
I with some direct calls for socialism and social change. I think Mandalorian season 3 has some things that are just as direct in terms of what I call direct calls for political change or highlighting things and saying this is how it could work if we just decided to do this. So Andor is dealing in a different deck of cards, I think, in that it is so clear. I don't think Andor is as deep as the other shows. I just think Andor is on here it is, where the other shows are playing around with that Star Wars mythic. And because of that, unless you're looking for it, because you and I grew up in a generation, Jen, that we're not told to look for the meaning. We're told to just enjoy your little teddy bears, get your
Hmm.
toys, and grow up. And so that
Hmm.
kind of carried forward, where yes, it's easier to lose the point and the themes in other Star Wars, where Andor is like saying, "Hey, could you pay attention?"
Yes, right, exactly. It's much more explicit. And Michael
Hmm.
McCarcel makes a great point. Some people are so afraid to be seen as kiddie or childish that they double down on hating the more fun aspects. And that's kind
Yeah,
of what I saw with the people that were using Andor as an example of see, Star Wars isn't something just for kids. This is
right.
my Star Wars. And I was very confused by that because one of the brilliant things about Star Wars is how well it plays for people of all ages because of what
Mm,
you're talking about, because of like their use of myth and whimsy and other species and things like that.
right.
Andor was great. It was another, specialty at the buffet, but to me,
Mm,
that's not my Star Wars. It's just one aspect of Star Wars that we love.
yeah. Yeah. Physics Buddy Joe saying Rebels is my favorite. Jay from Nowhere. Star Wars is not a zero-sum game. Andor is my fave. That doesn't take away from anything else, and I can't control what another person infers from Andor is my fave. Yeah, yeah. And that, I get that there too. What I started this one. Chris from Broaxium. There it is. Chris over at Broaxium said it actually had a number for the question, Jen. The balance should be 80-20 myth to realism. Look, Andor's great, but when we got to the Force Healer, I almost forgot about the mysticism in Star Wars, which Gilroy's kind of said, that was definitely intentional. I think it really, when we did the episode, you check a couple weeks ago, we talked about that Force Healer scene, and we all three love it. We love what it did. I thought it was used perfectly. And yeah, even when it was mentioned, it stood out, even an old hardliner like me who loves the mysticism in Star Wars, because it was like, oh yeah, this is a different world. We are on the ground. This is boots on the ground storytelling, which is what they tried to do. But I love that it was there. And it even made it pop more for me.
Yeah, it's so funny because I was so immersed in this real world galaxy that when the Force Healer came up at first, I was like, she's a hack. She doesn't know.
She's a hack.
It was terrible. That was my first instinct, but it's because we were so like grounded that, for me, I love the mythic. I love the spiritual side of Star Wars, but I had shut that part of me off.
Did you?
I think I did. It was it was just like for Andor. I just kind of was like, it was one of those things where like I'm on a roller coaster and I'm terrified of roller coasters and I'm just gripping the side and I'm like, I'm going to get through this because Andor was just so real and it was so emotional. And there are things going on in our world that are so upsetting. And then to have my fun fantasy world also be upsetting, it was a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah, the Gorman Massacre episode was, I say, cosmically timed, where you're just like, they prepped that episode years ago. That started to come into concept years ago, and it's released right with the moment it is. It's like sometimes they say there are always those chosen to witness history and document it and share it with the rest of the world for all time. And Andor had kind of that vibe when that episode came up. But Michael, as this Force Healer was so much a breath of fresh air in those final episodes, I really needed her there. Yeah, I think the Force shines all the way through the not only the episodes but the series. When you look at it from that kind of cosmic force, it's always there. It's always there. But you'll still have to make your choices, which is part of it. Part of what we're talking about here as well. All right, Jen, any more on this topic? We also got some great other questions here as well.
Oh, fun. Okay. Yeah, that's I can see that, Physics Buddy Joe. Andor was a little too current events and stole the escapism. And it's funny because like obviously we know our history and we know that they pulled from all sorts of things from many, many, many years ago, right? But there is something kind of shocking about turning on the news and seeing one thing. Like today, I see the Border Patrol is going through MacArthur Park. Like an occupation. And my first thought was like Rogue One and Jeddah, why? I don't know. I can't help it. It's just like, even though I know the historical context of many times that we've seen this before in our world, it is surprising to then turn on our fantasy show and see it mirrored there.
Yeah. Which I think in the end was needed.
It was, yes.
For those, I think if you're a ForceCenter friend and you've been listening to the show a while, or whether you just jumped on, I think we're all plugged into the themes. You stick around for our themes discussion. You stick around for us taking the fantastical and applying it to our own lives there, but not everyone does. And that's why I try not to be snarky. I try not to be too snooty. It may be impossible at times for me. I am an a-hole. But like when people miss it, I'm always like, God, come on. But like, that's just also normal. That's just life. You got 50 other things going on. You watch Star Wars and you like it, and you like the pew pew, and you like what it makes you feel. But maybe those folks needed an Andor to maybe put the myth and realism into a little bit of an unbalanced state for a while. And other shows will start to write it again. And, I definitely know. And it's not like these shows don't have these really realistic moments. I'm just rewatching Acolyte, and I think there's some real gritty emotional moments too that are more real than other parts of Star Wars, but it's wrapped up in a very old style Jedi story. Old style, I mean, like that prequel kind of era story that I think that it did so well. So it's all there. But I do appreciate Andor. Going back to what I was saying too about like having some problems after episode 1 or season 1. I've changed after 2 going. I think some folks needed to maybe hopefully see what's there in Star Wars and politically.
And what people are saying, Joel, Star Wars 77 was also current events too. You just might be too young to remember. Anyone remember Vietnam? Jay, stormtroopers were never cloaked in escapist myth. That's true. That is true. And
It's
yeah,
true, down to
I
the
was too
name.
young. But like, they're Ewoks. You know what I mean? The stormtrooper bumps his head. It wasn't like we were seeing torture scenes like we got in Andor, or that rape was. Are we allowed to say that on YouTube? Is
YouTube
like
decides.
about to happen, right? It's like we can imagine that, but depending on your personality, you may not even go there. It's a totally different thing about how explicit it was in Andor. That it's like, I know all that. I know that we should not be celebrating the stormtroopers or whatever. But
yeah, it's funny. Yeah. No, and Jay from Nowhere is completely right. It's in the name. It's in it.
Sorry.
It's in the branding, right? The Imperial Stormtroopers. We know where that comes from. But even as a kid, and I'm a history buff now. I mean, I'm one of those boring white middle-aged dudes that just watch. Well, I'm watching a 9-part series on the history of New York that would probably put everyone else to sleep. But I'm like, this is fantastic. But as a kid, when I first heard that there were stormtroopers in real life, and I will be careful with the words that YouTube doesn't like, because we don't mean it's stupid that you'd be demonetized, but we would.
I know.
Potentially. When you see that the stormtroopers have they're real, where they come from, I didn't go, oh, I'm 11 or 12 maybe at this point. I just go, oh, that's just like Star Wars. There was nothing or no one spurning me to look deeper. Nowadays, even if you're 12, you're probably being spurned on to look deeper into Star Wars because of podcasts, because of TikToks, because of the conversation. I was just a kid alone in Arroyo Grande, California. I had no one else to really talk to or get this with. It was just, oh, that's kind of a reference. And Reagan has Star Wars in the space. Like it was just a reference. But Star Wars was asking you to look deeper maybe later on.
Right. And Joel, Leia was tortured in A New Hope. Yes. But the difference is, the difference is, as Jay said, it was alluded to. Like my kids, my 5-year-old, my 4-year-old, they saw that scene and were just like, oh, I would never show them the Bix scene in Andor. You know what I mean? It's like it's the difference between whether it's implied and how much it's implied, and like the performance that Adria Arjona gives, where it's like, oh, that she got it was horrible what they put her into.
Yeah. And I think the galaxy is big enough to have both. I even got in a discussion at a bar recently, still have some reservations on how far it went with Bix this season in the first 3 episodes. But then again, and I call it a branding thing, which sometimes upsets people, like I'm working for Disney. But I'm talking that as a Star Wars fan. I don't know, but again, when I see some of the folks in the YouTube space whose theories completely miss the point on that, I'm like, okay, then maybe we did need it. Maybe in 2025, maybe we do need to just put it in front of them.
They missed the point. Oh my gosh. Well.
Yes. Yeah, Joel says this. Look, hey, honestly, I think Andor is okay for kids. I think society's changed. What is okay for kids? Culture and society has changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, not being a parent, don't feel the full force of that. I know you do, Jed. And
Yeah.
Joel's not suggesting 5-year-olds, but even that 12-year-old audience that Lucas is talking about is dealing with more things faster than we did.
Yeah, it is something that I do think about, especially because like Roblox, there's so many of those obbies or whatever they're called are so violent, But again, it's like, they're running around as pigs and doing it. It doesn't, there's like a distance to it. There is something about like sometimes my kids will be like, is this real? Like, not that it's a documentary, but I don't know, just seeing like live actors acting things feels a little bit more real. But yeah, maybe when they're like 12 and 13. Look at what we were watching as kids. Oh my gosh. I'm like trying to put on this stuff for them and I'm like, you can't watch this. This is how did my parents didn't know half the time. I was going into Purple Rain when I was so young. Like, what the heck?
What?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Gosh.
Well, and then every generation faces or lives amongst a moral panic, usually from religious zealots and politicians looking to build on their power and stoke fear. I just was watching on HBO Max. There's a documentary on Mad Magazine. About halfway through it, so I haven't got to the end of it. But I didn't really realize, Bill Gaines, who published it, like he actually testified before Congress. He's put out horror comics. And in the 50s, these comical booklets, as Mr. Burns would say, were destroying the youths of America, Jen. And they actually had a hearing, and he volunteered to go. And it ended up with him shutting down that part of his company because they were like, your horror is too much for these kids to take. How dare you do it? Meanwhile, at school, they're ducking under their desks because nuclear war is hanging over all of us from the 50s on into the 80s. And now, but where it's like, get under your desk and save yourself, and also don't be influenced by the Tales from the Crypt comics. So the moral panics always exist, and I think to the point that Joel's making is the kids are all right, and yeah, you're right. Maybe when all the images are hard to escape, maybe I'm not saying all of Star Wars needs to be Andor, and that's the new barometer for kids, but I'm just like maybe. Again, you're a parent, but maybe we're too protective. I don't want to stumble into a moral panic.
Yeah, no. I mean, we show my kids everything that's been happening. We've taken them to protests and like, they're seeing ICE, raiding shops and whatever. Like they're seeing that. In fact, just today I saw a notification about ICE where we were driving and I had to explain that to my daughter and explain our family history and all this stuff, right? And so it's like they're faced with so much. And my dad being a reporter, like he did not shy away from any. He was like telling me horribly graphic things because he was so desensitized as a newsman and he thought it was important for me to know the truth. So I think it is important for kids to know the truth and be aware of all this stuff. But it is interesting how they still do like escapism. They loved Skeleton Crew. I don't know how they would respond to Andor yet. Maybe.
I was just going to mention this show, and I'm glad Nick did. Nick Tiersay, kids who watch Resistance are prepared for this moment. Star Wars Resistance, which definitely was geared towards maybe a younger audience with its pratfalls and zany comedy, has some of the best stuff in Star Wars in regards to war refugees, the costs of war, and the need to resist. I think that is tremendously underrated as a Star Wars story and deserves to be revisited. So excellent point.
And 8984M, it's one thing to allow parents discretion to parents, but it's another to force artists to change their art because some parents don't like it. Agreed, which is why Andor is important. I think you can have the Skeleton Crew and you can have the Andor. I don't want it to all be the same. And I don't want it to feel like creators are boxed in, which I kind of felt like with The Mandalorian, where I felt like, should I be watching this with my kids? Like, I don't know. It felt like it started to play a little bit to all ages for my liking, even though I'm a parent.
Interesting.
That's my criticism. Have I ever shared that before? Maybe I should keep my mouth shut.
No. I like that. I love that. When did that set in for you? I also was going to go into Brady's question. you should not only thank Andor, as Jen had said, and Tony Gilroy. You should thank Dee Snider and Twisted Sister in the 80s, going before Congress.
Oh my gosh.
I agree with that. Yeah, what side question? We'll start. We got some other questions.
We have so many things,
in the
sorry.
time remaining here today, yeah, so when did that set in for you in Mandalorian?
I think it was with and don't come at me for the species. It was the bird storyline where like they had the little kid Mando. This is like my mom retelling this, but like, the person with the helmet. And there was that big bird, and then
the bird that took. Yes,
bird that
early
to
season
me
3
was like straight out of like a Looney Tunes. No shade, I love Looney Tunes, but it felt a little bit too junior for my liking. Where I was like, where is this story going? But then again, I was grumpy, and sometimes when we rewatch things, our opinions of it change, and that's okay. I'm allowed to change, just like Vader.
At the last minute, yeah.
At the last minute.
Look, I'm excited for Ahsoka season 2, and I'm maybe now infamously, especially if you're in our Discord, I was in a spot where the closest I came to walking away from Star Wars was 2023. Just done with it all. I'm gonna take my things off the shelf, retire, and thank you. It was fun, just because a lot of things in life and a lot of just the tedium of creating shows every week, and then Ahsoka pops up during the strikes. We can't even talk about it. And I was like, this ain't hitting me, and this hit me in a way that I'm actually upset about. And I'm looking forward to revisiting it. I haven't watched the show since then. I'm looking forward to revisiting it. I'm excited about some of the news coming out of season 2. So you're right, Jen. We all need to take that lesson from Vader and Kylo. You can, at the last second, suddenly like a TV show you didn't like.
And that's the end of that.
And that's the end of that. Zach, great question. I hope we answered it. That actually inspired. It was more of a thought starter than a question for us here. We went to a lot of different spots, and we got confessions from Jen and confessions from me. So there you go. All right. We got some other questions, though. You ready for these, Jen?
Yeah.
All right. First of all, Cameron Stewart has a two-parter. Alex and Molly of Star Wars Explained. Check out our friends. We're discussing this on their weekly roundup, and I was wondering what you would think of a, quote, what-if style show told through dreams, visions, or meditations, like Vader in his tank with a vision of what if he won on Mustafar, kill Palpatine, etc., or a dream Obi-Wan has in his cave, Yoda, Palpatine, Old Man Luke, Ahsoka, and no multiverse.
Ooh.
Where do you go with that?
I think it reminds me kind of like Visions a little bit, right? A little bit, or even like the Lego Star Wars. I have not watched the Marvel What If, but I hear people really like it. Is that right? Is that accurate, guys?
I think in the beginning, yeah, someone maybe check it. I'm not invested in the Marvel game, but yeah, I think there's some, and the comics have that, and there's been some stuff in Star Wars Legends comics where they do a kind of a what if play out.
Yeah, I do. Because Star Wars fans in general, and I'm speaking about myself, we sometimes get so focused on what is canon, what is not canon. It becomes a hot debate on Reddit and YouTube. I don't know if they would be able to do it any differently than they've already been doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah. I start this. My answer is unsurprisingly a little grumpy, which has nothing to do with if Star Wars wanted to do this or Marvel doing it. It's some of the discussions around it, because it is fun. But if I have to hear one more, if someone puts a what if and they go, and that's why the sequel sucked, we're not having a conversation anymore, because they didn't suck, number one, and two, like that's a what if. What ifs don't move my needle, right? I hear a lot, well, what they should have done with Finn. Yeah, they should have done 15 things. They did this thing. So you like that or not? Or what is that thing telling you? And so the what ifs used to be fun. They can be fun, but I just don't want to face that stuff anymore. And I have to be honest about that. Also, because one of the greatest what ifs in Star Wars is the Last Jedi novelization. Jason Fry, as grumpy as Fry can be, by the way, he's a grump, but game respects game. But it begins with that vision from Luke Skywalker, which is fantastic. I think even I wrote about it in my book, Why We Love Star Wars. Like, I love it, but all that was taken out of it was people thought it was real, and that he actually at one point had a wife, that he married Cammy. And I was like, did you not? Again, it's a media literacy issue. So even that what if within a story, which was a vision, was a dream, it was the Force couldn't get to Luke, so the Force said, I got to get to this guy at his dreams. And remind him that if he had not gotten involved, even though there was a lot of weird circumstances to get him to Alderaan, or excuse me, Alderaan, to get him to Yavin 4, this is what would have happened if you had stayed behind. And this is what would have happened to Tatooine and the people you love. And it was a complete what if, and it was completely misinterpreted. And idiotic places like Screen Rant putting out the Star Wars reveals new canon. That kind of stuff drives me crazy. So I have to answer this question honestly, Cameron. It could be fun, but I don't think I want it.
Yeah. We can't have nice things because it's so true. Would spin off into some ridiculous place or be used to be like, see, Rian Johnson should have done this, or Leslie Headland should have done that, and that would have made it better. And I don't want it to be like that.
And it's fun. Like Dennis Gill is a great, like, what if Grievous killed Obi-Wan on Utapau? I do love questions like that. I'm a Game of Thrones fan, as everyone knows. And I love having some fun. What if? What if Ned Stark left King's Landing? But it just kind of devolves into the other parts of the discourse that I don't like. And Joel's who cares what Screen Rant says? I 100% agree with you, Joel. The problem is everyone does, because the amount of friends of mine who are not in the digital media bubble who are like, did you see what that article said? And it's in a clickbait article like that. That's to me part of the problem, because you're 100% right.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
And Joel says it's very easy to ignore the discourse. Just up, Karen. But I pay my bills by being in the discourse. This is my career. So I can't, Joel. I can't.
We can't.
I can't.
Oh.
All right. We got more super chats and questions. Physics buddy Joe. We just bought a green Subaru, so I badged it as the Andor series. Going to get Yub Nub plates, and my wife is already calling it Wicket. So Jen, how come you don't have this already?
I was like, I failed as an Ewok lover. I have failed. That is such a cool idea. I instead got a car. I was trying to get a white. See, here again. I was trying to get a white car with some like black trim because I'm like, it looks like a stormtrooper. What the heck? Have I always been this dark side energy? I don't know.
I think so, Jen. I think look.
Actually, yeah.
We look. We know some of your music tastes in the past. Other center, we learned a lot about Dark Jen.
Yeah, Dark Jen.
Dark Jen's out there with a red blade. She wants to drive around in a stormtrooper helmet. All right, let's get to some very generous super chats. You guys have been all great today. This has been a fun conversation, at least for us. Mr. Ken Plume over at Force 5. He's got a new episode of Force 5 up. You can also see interviews with Joseph and I. And Jen, when you're finally done with school, Mr. Plume will gladly interview you over there as well. Jen, construct your ultimate Ewok/Jabba display. So I don't know if that's just one or the other, or do you find a way to put Wicket and Jabba together?
My husband actually made me a shadow box coffee table, and I had big plans of having this elaborate diorama inside of it with Jabba's palace. I actually started making it. I did all sorts of cool modeling things, and then I don't know what happened. My ADHD kicked in. But I somehow I came across it on eBay or something. The Bright Tree Village, the 1980s playset, the Ewok playset, Endor playset. Yeah. Boy, I want that. And I was like envisioning, I have no space in my house. I sew in my kitchen. So I have no space. But I was like, how could I create that scene and live out my childhood fantasies? Because I never had that playset. But someday, if I get my own craft room, I am having it.
Well, I do have bad news, Jen. I'm going to update my living will and trust to bequeath you my life-size Wicket. The Wicket. That Wicket. It brings me joy. I would touch its head every time I walked by it, or rub its belly for good luck. Well, stand by, Jen. You might clear some space. Might need to clear some space. We got... Fredtastic 314 says, sorry to bring up a mending wound, but is Ken's Cantina encounter close to coming to blows? Just curious. Thanks for Star Wars content I love. Yeah, it's funny. I even got texts from Molly Damon and others. Yeah, recently I was at a birthday party at a nerd bar, and it got kind of tense. I got angry. I was like Michael Douglas at the end of Falling Down. Like, what? I'm the bad guy? Because I was in a room with a bunch of Gen X shit Star Wars takes. The kind that I just absolutely not only get infuriated about the takes, but I get mad at my generation for absolutely trying to take away Star Wars from the younger generations that came after them, from the special editions to the prequels, all this stuff. Not that all this stuff is perfect, and we always give the caveat. I was so angry. I have since kind of pulled back. I've only been in physical confrontations in my old job. 17 years of fighting and kicking and screaming and handcuffing, and so I'm not going to get into a bar fight. But I couldn't contain my aggressive energy. It was palpable. It was palpable. So that's not the way, Jen. That's not the way. It's not the way of the Force.
But it feels good. It feels good to give into your anger, not to blows, but to at least express yourself and defend your position. I am coming into my own in that way.
Well, yes, and I have some life stuff this week where I'm like I'm going to change and be different and speak up and speak honestly, and that's for the betterment of all of us. But in that situation, I didn't even get what made me so mad is I didn't even get to really talk about it. I got virtually patted on the head and told, "Oh, we respect your passion, but all this stuff sucks," and pushed. Gosh. They literally moved away from me.
Oh my
I literally had to grip my tumbler of my drink. It's hard to be like, we're going outside. We're taking this outside. So anyways, no, it's all good. Fantastic. It's all Star Wars. It's all Star Wars. There we go. Joel Davis, always a very strong and wonderful contributor in our Discord. We appreciate you there, Joel. If you ever want to see the best mythic redemption ever, watch Avatar: The Last Airbender of Netflix 2018. She-Ra, that's another one, or both, in my opinion, are better than Vader. I hear that a lot about the Avatar one. I didn't finish She-Ra. I didn't watch. I watched a little bit of the new He-Man with our buddy Tiffany Smith in it. But yeah, I love that stuff. I hear a lot. Last Airbender. Anime doesn't move my needle too much, so it's me, not them. But I hear that a lot about that show.
Yeah, She-Ra's awesome. I watched that with my my eldest many years ago. It was great.
Love that. Mumbo Jimbo. Funny how Andor brings the atrocities of the Empire to a new light for me too, but in episode 4, they blow up a whole planet and then didn't hide it from us. Yeah, and that's going back to our discussion of the realistic. I really think that's true, where you just, by design, and it wasn't just to me, I don't know what you've researched George's life even more than mine, Jen. I really go to, it wasn't just that George wanted to write a new myth for kids or 12-year-olds. Like this is a guy that was close to doing Apocalypse Now, and wanted to tell a story about what was going on and war and politics and more, but ended up, and the details, are a lot deeper than this, but ends up going to doing Star Wars. Also, he couldn't get Flash Gordon. Yeah, we know that. But I always look at that as this, like, him kind of like, how can I get the same points across, but in a way that will be received by everyone? Apocalypse Now, very famous film. I also don't know a lot of, Apocalypse Now conventions going on. I don't know a lot of Apocalypse Now podcasts going on. George got his message out, and so he had to package it up in a certain way. But that's the result. I didn't stop and think about what Alderaan was, other than Leia was upset till 12, 13, 14, when you're on no longer the playgrounds, but you're, outside of your 9th grade history class talking about with your buddy.
Yeah, exactly. It's, you understand what you understand developmentally, unless, something's happened in your life where you can maybe connect it to it. But yeah.
All right, Quadface. How would Grogu and the Mandos view the Jedi coming back? Would Grogu be forced to face his past in a way like number 4? How would Rey view it? All right. Yeah, we don't. To me, great question, Quadface.
Good question.
I I don't. To me, Grogu's journey is so incomplete on that, and I do hope the movie is going to deal directly with what happens to him after Kellerman Beck grabs him. I'm hoping Ahmed Best is being real coy.
Yeah.
About his involvement. But I think, the Mandos, even if the Mandos are like good with it, there's still some of that tension built into them with the Jedi.
Yeah, I saw Ahmed Best speak on May the 4th, in a long chat, and he didn't hint at any returning, but he definitely did make it seem like Kellerman Beck will be back in some form or fashion. It just seemed like, I don't know, like he feels like the character, and he's right. The character is important. It's important to have that type of character in Star Wars, who is a teacher, a mentor. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. We'll hopefully get more of that there. Coming down to the end of the show. So if you got any questions, go ahead and get it in here. Obi-Wan Jacoby. From a certain point of view question, are there any stories from any of the collections that refuse to accept as canon or just plain don't like? Yes, a lot of them.
Yeah.
I love the series. I speak often of my pal Madeline Rue's short story Eclipse. I think the Claudia Gray one, in which we actually see Qui-Gon and learn more about him forming his self up again in front of Kenobi. I think there's so many beautiful ones in the Star Wars one and the Empire one. I have not read the Jedi one. Just have not read it. Was no longer interested in going on the journey. And that goes to even some of the New Hope ones. There's as Joseph's pointed out, there's a lot of like little story editing errors in all the ones that take place on Yavin 4, contradictions within them. And then that Dianoga one is both beautiful and a bridge too far for me.
Yeah.
And there's even one that's like a Tusken. It's like the early one, the Tusken sneaking into the Sandcrawler when they're buying R2 and R5, D4 and 3PO, and that was a little bit too. I don't love always, like I do love Lost Stars. I love that book, which is very what I describe, that Forrest Gumpy. They were always there at famous moments in the story, but that worked for me a little bit better. I don't like a large amount, Jen, of and around the corner on Andor was this character that you didn't think of before. That sometimes it really rubs up against me.
I really have a difficult time because for me, I'm still stuck in some old Legends stuff where I'm like, yeah, Margie really isn't real. She's not really anywhere. She's not ever gonna be like, it's just weird. All these things that I kind of like absorb just because they were a part of me. Or there's things where like in Catalyst, I really, really enjoyed Catalyst so much that it made me want to see even more of Lyra.
Lyra,
Lyra. And where I was like, oh,
you're right.
I'm
hearing like Ben Mendelsohn now. Yeah,
exactly. I really liked her character in the book, and we got so little of her in the movie that it made me just kind of long for that. So the point is, I don't read that way. I don't have to worry or feel bad.
I don't like to read. No,
I don't like learning.
And I will admit, I'm going to eventually swing through the Return of the Jedi one because why not? I'm also a little bit of a completionist, but it also came out in that era where maybe I'm more honest with ForceCenter listeners than I was back then. But it's just like this at times is a lovely job. But there was just times where I was like, I don't give a shit about that stormtrooper on Andor, what he thought. I don't care. I don't care. It was not a good year for all that stuff. But the behind the tree thing is unlike Quinlan Voss, physics buddy Joe. That to me was Quinlan Voss coming out of the Phantom Menace, meaning, hey, that's a cool looking character. What's his story? Is a little differently engineered than what sometimes is, which is, hey, let's go back there. What if it'd be as if behind Quinlan Voss was another character that you just didn't know, but now we're creating it 35, 40 years later. That's where I get a little where sometimes I like it, like Singer Rath Valis from the Aftermath series being on Endor. That stuff makes sense. There's those. It's not a big wide general thing. It's case by case with me. I just know when it hits too far for me. All right, a couple more. We're going to get through this here, then we're going to get on with our lives and days. Tie Brute, but where are the Tie Brutes? Where's Justice? I do enjoy the Tie Brutes. You familiar with the Tie Brutes, Jen?
I'm trying to, okay. Oh,
they're the heavy starfighters.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely love those. What is that? What is that? I'm looking up. Is it Solo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Han
Solo. Yep,
Solo.
yep. There
Yeah,
it is.
Solo.
Yep. I love new TIE fighters. Love even that
Oh,
Andor's brought one back. It's making new for a lot of live action fans. So I'm all for it. TIE Brute's TIE Brute. Let's do it. Get more of you
yeah.
in Star Wars. Let's do a
All
TIE
right.
Brute series. Maybe TIE Brute video game.
That would be
Fantastic says, thankful Star Wars didn't include any Alderaan deniers. That's fair.
oh,
But you could do that. You could
that'd be
do that.
interesting.
That, if you're to, someone with the Gilroy team was to go tell a story between A New Hope and Empire, you could do that. Quick one from Dennis Gill. What's one piece of technology you wish could be in the Star Wars universe? I would take the sonic screwdriver from Doctor Who or even the transporter from Star Trek. This is a great question
That's
because often we
good.
get what Star Wars tech would you want to see in the real world or something like that. This is the reversal of that.
Oh man.
Where do you go?
I don't know because I just immediately my thought went to like the data pads, which are the close like just like our iPads basically. That's one of the things I love about Star Wars is that it feels so like our world. But like the
Yeah.
sonic screwdriver, the transporter. Oh, okay. Well, no, I'm not going to mention that because that's some fandom I don't mention anymore. Okay.
I would want. Yeah, no, I got you.
You know what I mean? I was like, oh, no. Yeah.
I would take the Heart of Gold, which is the ship from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that Zaphod Beeblebrox steals as the president. It's got the improbability drive. And I'd love to go around the Star Wars galaxy with an improbability drive, just showing up where it's, the most. Could the Force even control the improbability drive? Would be the question. I'd go with that.
I like Jeannie from Tahini's. I think there was a surprising lack of security cameras in Star Wars.
I love that.
Yes.
That's amazing. All right, final star question of the day, Jen. Joel asks, "What's it like as a Gen X fan meeting younger Star Wars fans? To them, the OT isn't the end all be all or even their least favorite part of Star Wars." Yes, this has happened to me. Have you had this, Jen? Have you been out in the wild? And we're talking, and I'll take this. I think I'll take it this way. Someone who's like a positive Star Wars fan. This isn't someone you're going to get in an argument with at a bar. Like someone who's just like, "Oh, I love Star Wars." But yeah, the OT, not my favorite. It looks bad. Have you had that happen to you?
Yeah, the conversations with kids has been interesting, seeing what they like and how easily they fall off from it. But I had an interesting conversation with a parent whose child's name was Cassian. That was awesome, and she said that her son is a huge fan. He loves all that. He's like 5. He loves this, loves that, and I was like, oh, that's really neat. But yeah, even my own kids, it's like they like the Phantom Menace, I think, a little bit more than Return of the Jedi. I mean, they like the Ewoks and they like certain aspects of it, but they loved Padme. They loved Jar Jar. The way it looked more modern, obviously. And so it's all right. I'm just happy when anyone likes Star Wars. I don't care.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm with you. I think, Joel, to your question, it is a little bit of a litmus test, a little bit of a Rorschach test. It's all the tests. When you are, I'm not even saying a Star Wars podcaster, but maybe that can work too. But when you are a Star Wars fan from that era, and again, by the way, it's not I know 17-year-olds that love the original trilogy. All the way through. Some people in comments like, "Hey, I'm Gen Z, and I like yes." But in general, this has happened. I think it's a test that the first time you hear that, your instincts might be to say you're wrong and crazy. And I was at a birthday party a couple years ago, and a friend of couple friends, a lot of you know who Roxy Stryer is and Steph Sabrad, and one of their friends. We were just chatting, and there was this kind of conversation that came up with these girls, all like 10, 15, maybe even almost 20 years younger than me, and they were like, one of them was just like, "Yeah, I watched Original Trilogy. It's just," and I'm assuming special editions too, but just. It looked really bad. It just old special effects, and it just kind of was boring. But I love everything else, and I love Rebels, and I love this, and I love that. And that to me just speaks to a lot of times how it's presented. The movies can only be made in their time. And yes, George goes and updates stuff, but that was look, not necessarily editing, pacing. Phantom Menace.
Right.
Remember at the time that the beginning doc Ben Burt and George and everyone sitting there with it after that first screening of George saying, I think I've gone too far. That had a lot to do with the editing and the pacing and too many things at once. But now, I always look at movie trailers as the true example of this. You go back and watch a movie trailer from the 60s, and it literally is like, here's a scene from the Pink Panther. Watch David Niven. He's going to come into the scene right now. Let's listen to his dialogue. Oh, that's going to be great. In theaters in March. Versus boom, 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 boom. And now what we see with TikTok, we're the MTV generation. We are now more used to cutting fast, telling stories in 4 minutes, telling stories without dialogue. It's going in a general sense. And I think the OT is, even with the special editions, is of its time. And that is maybe what people are reacting to.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, and granted, slightly difference in age, but I saw my kids watch Return of the Jedi versus The Phantom Menace, and the way that they were watching The Phantom Menace was like, like you're saying, something's always happening. You hear something off in the distance. There's a funny moment. The pod race scene alone, there's just so much more that is geared for how we consume media.
Yeah. It changes. It's in art and all that stuff. All right. Well, we went to a lot of spaces today, Jen.
Yes.
So hopefully everyone out there was satisfied. We appreciate all of you swinging in. We especially appreciate any of you who contributed with the super chat. It really helps the show go and grow. So we're out of here. We'll see you for the news tomorrow with Jen and I. It's not 100% recorded, so I don't want to overpromise, but we're going to have another episode of Blank is Why We Love Star Wars with Nick from Bayside. So that should be out later this week. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you all for listening. You can find us on social media at ForceCenter Pod, on Facebook at ForceCenter Podcast. Don't forget merch available at TeePublic still, or check out our Fourth Wall Shop where I have added new items there. Tell us if you want anything else. Also, podcast is available and a lot of spots. Just search, you'll find us. But don't forget, on Sundays we release audio only. The Databank Brawl Show from 2016 to 2020. We are about halfway through that process there. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Get into our Discord there. Follow me at Kednapsuck or my website, kednapsuck.com. When it works, depending on what browser you're on. Jen, where can they find you?
You can find me on TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138 and everywhere else at Jennifer Landa.
There you go. That's it. We will see you all next time here on ForceCenter.